Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I've got 3 o'clock, so let's get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Mike Smulligan. I'm a forester with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, and it's my pleasure to host this webinar today on behalf of the Michigan Society of American Foresters. This is the third in a 5-part series on white oak. And I'm excited today to introduce my colleagues, Chris Schmiege and Jagdish Pudel, with the DNR's Utilization and Marketing Program and our DNR economist. And I got a little preview of their presentations yesterday. There's a lot of really interesting data to look at and discuss, so I'm really looking forward to today. Again, today is the third in a 5-part series, and all of these webinars are being recorded and will be available on the Michigan Society of American Foresters website. I will show you that link in a moment. But just a quick preview, next month on the first Wednesday of February, we're going to be taking a look at ecological restoration of rare oak ecosystems. And then on the first Wednesday in March 1st, we're going to be taking a look at managing oak for birds in particular and other wildlife as well. And so please join us for those webinars the next 2 months as well. So this is part of a larger national white oak initiative. The American Forest Foundation has taken a leadership role working with a whole bunch of partners throughout the eastern and central United States, different state agencies, universities, forest products companies, landowners, landowner associations, foresters, etc., are all working with the American Forest Foundation with funding generously provided by the U.S. Forest Service through their landscape scale restoration program. And so this National White Oak Initiative is really part of engaging in a conversation throughout the eastern and central United States about how we can better manage our oak forests to make sure that we are getting the desired future conditions that we're looking for. One quick note, last month when we hosted this, the new landowner guides were just out. I've actually printed off a couple of hard copies, and I want to give a shout out. The American Forest Foundation is going to be increasing our funding a little bit to be able to print and provide these for foresters and landowners in Michigan. So those new landowner guides are available at the whiteoakinitiative.org website. You can download a PDF, but if you're a forester and landowner here in Michigan, be looking for those at upcoming forestry meetings here in Michigan. One quick note about the Michigan team that's working on this White Oak Coalition here in Michigan. Myself and Jesse Bramer here at the Michigan Department of Natural Resources put together a really fun team of organizations that are interested in white oak from ecological and wildlife and economic perspectives. And we want to, express our appreciation to the American Forest Foundation and the Forest Service for some funding to help us do some projects here in Michigan. And I believe that other states throughout the east and central U.S. are getting some of this funding to do similar initiatives in other states. One quick note about the Michigan Society of American Foresters. So Michigan SAF is hosting this webinar series, and I'm the program chair for Michigan SAF. And so that's why I get to host these webinars, because of the work that I do to help Michigan Society of American Foresters put on fun and interesting meetings for professional foresters to learn new things and to network and find additional ways for us to contribute to society and to help manage forests well. And just a completely shameless plug, please join SAF. We need foresters to make this society even better and even more effective and to better serve society. Got 345 members here in Michigan, and we'd love to, see hundreds more join us. One quick benefit for Michigan SAF members is that we're spending some of those funds from the Forest Service and AFF on buying 150 of those books, Managing Oak Forests in the Eastern United States. That's one of the best textbooks that we could find looking at oak silviculture and management. And we're buying those, and we're going to be providing those to Michigan SAF members that are participating in this webinar series. So if you want one of those books and you're a member of Michigan SAF or join Michigan SAF, I'll get one of those books to you, either mailing one directly to you, Or please join us at Michigan's spring SAF meeting in Grayling on March 30 and 31st. And I'm hoping to open up registration for that meeting yet this week. So be looking for that notice there. All foresters, whether you're a member of Michigan SAF or from another state, are eligible for 1.5 continuing forestry education credits as a result of attending this webinar. I will be submitting the attendance records directly to the National Society of American Foresters. You don't need to do anything else in addition to getting those 1.5 CFEs. I will be submitting the attendance list directly to SAF, and you should be seeing those getting credited to your account. Hopefully by the end of the month, although could be a slight delay there, but hopefully by the end of the month. SAF has been very responsive lately. I'm just about to go on a little vacation for a couple of weeks, so I may not get it to SAF on time. We will be having recordings of this webinar available at michigansaf.org. The other 2 webinar recordings are on there. We'll be getting this recording on there as well shortly. And please look for this recording and other resources at michigansaf.org. Now, as a forester, I couldn't resist taking a look at some data. I got these data from Scott Pugh. He's the forester here in Michigan with the U.S. Forest Service Forest Inventory and Analysis. And I believe that both Chris and Jagdish will also be using some data from Scott. So Scott and FIA is an excellent resource. And, you know, here in Michigan, I think the trends are similar to other states where we've got pretty healthy, mature oak forests, but we're not seeing really good regeneration. And the real issue isn't so much the production of acorns or seedlings, it's that sapling stage where our oaks are not recruiting from the sapling stage into the pole timber and the saw timber stage. And so there's some challenges here. And if we want to see, you know, similar numbers of oak forests here in Michigan in 50 or 100 years, we need to be thinking about this now and looking at ways in terms of how we manage our forests to make sure that we're having successful regeneration and recruitment through all life stages of oak. So I believe that was my last introductory slide. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to be turning it over to Chris Schmiege. He's with our Michigan Department of Natural Resources Utilization and Marketing Program. Chris, are you able to share your screen?
Yeah. My video is not working, but I should be able to share my screen. Let's see.
Okay.
All right. Hopefully you can see that.
Yes. Get it into presentation mode, and then I'm going to turn off my camera and mute, and the floor is yours. It's looking good, Chris.
Sorry.
No worries. We lost the share there.
Yeah. Okay, how about now?
Yes, we can see your second slide. So if you could back up to the title and get in presentation, you'll be good to go.
All right, I think I got it.
Perfect. Looks great. Thank you, Chris.
All right, well, thank you for the intro. My name's Chris Schmiege. I'm a forest utilization marketing specialist with the Michigan DNR, and I work in the forest utilization marketing section in the DNR, of which I'm one of 3 employees. And I work on a variety of projects and grants and other things to support the forest products industry. And I also work on surveys and data collection and reports that all have to do mostly with primary wood products and manufacturers. So, all right, so I'm going to be talking about white oak markets that we have here in Michigan. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of benefits to white oak, or it's important in a lot of ways, ecologically, for wildlife, in the urban environment. But one of those is also as a forest product, and specifically the wood of white oak species and all of the products that can be manufactured from that wood. And so why is white oak important, or why is it a good tree for producing forest products? And so it has many unique properties. It's high strength. It has typically heavier and stronger, or at least most white oak species are, than red oak. It has some natural decay resistance. It has some water tightness properties that make it useful for the manufacture of barrels for whiskey, wine, and beer. It has a desirable appearance. It can have a white color that the other oaks don't have. And it has a lot of versatility. There's a lot of sawing configurations that are possible. Rift cuts, quarter sawn, plain sawn. Each type of sawing can create unique patterns on the sawn surfaces, and so is used for many things: veneer, flooring, furniture. And I've got a long list of uses there, and the list goes on. All right, so I have some FIA data here. For the purpose of this talk, I'm going to be referring to white oak as more of a white oak species group. And so in Michigan, that would include 3 commercially important species: white oak, swamp white oak, and bur oak. And so within Michigan, there's about 19 million acres of timberland. And of that 19 million acres, about 8% is either white oak or a mixed white oak forest type. If we're just counting trees, about 2% of the growing stock trees on timberland is white oak. About 3% of the net growing stock volume, about 2% of the total harvest removal on all of timberland in Michigan is white oak. And then there's about 17 million cubic feet of annual net merchantable growth per year. So harvest removals are lower by quite a bit compared to growth. If you're not familiar with the FIA definitions, timberland versus forest land, essentially timberland is forest that's available for harvest. Doesn't necessarily mean it is getting harvested, but it's possible. All right, this map, credit U.S. Forest Service. This is also from the FIA program, and it shows live growing stock trees of those 3 species of white oak, swamp oak, bur oak, within Michigan. So trees over 5 inches in diameter. Each circle represents trees on an FIA plot, and live trees. And so as you can see, the greatest concentration of white oak is western part of the Lower Peninsula, which happens to coincide with a large part of the Huron-Manistee National Forest. And then outside of that, it's kind of sporadically distributed, but pretty much limited to the Lower Peninsula of Michigan. All right, so on this slide, I've got producers of white oak. Producers, by definition, would be a logging and trucking firm. I include this because they're an important part of the supply chain for all species, but in this case, white oak. And so based on surveys and other pieces of information that we've gathered, there are 39 logging and trucking firms in the state that have indicated that they harvest white oak. However, maybe a more accurate number would be the number of logging and trucking firms that are in the Lower Peninsula of Michigan, and that would be 345. Now, some of that 345 is multi-industry firms. So that, for example, they, own a logging and trucking operation, but they also have a sawmill. All right. So moving on to primary manufacturers of white oak. And so within Michigan, there are 129 primary mills that use white oak to produce some kind of primary, manufactured product. And so I've got a list here of all the products that are produced in Michigan with white oak. The most common are grade lumber and rough lumber, but also a pallet stock cants represent a pretty significant portion as well. Mulch is mostly urban sourced. There's some bioenergy, flooring, furniture stock, crane mats, fruit boxes, and pulp and paper. All right, so to kind of introduce this next series of slides, provide some background info, the Michigan DNR, in coordination with the U.S. Forest Service Timber Product Output Program, we conduct periodic mill surveys of primary forest products industry. And we do this to monitor forest product industry use, wood use, and trends, and compare that to data, inventory data from the FIA program and other sources. And so the most recently published info that we have for Michigan is 2018. We recently finished a 2021 survey, but those results are nearly published, but not published yet. And so this data is from the 2018 full canvas of the mills in Michigan. So as part of the survey, respondents are asked to estimate the volume of wood that they receive. And this is roundwood by type, species, and origin. And so as you can see on this table, I have standard cord volume broken down by region. And white oak is mostly, mostly from the northern lower peninsula and southern lower peninsula, Michigan. There's a small amount of roundwood received from Indiana and Ohio, almost none from the UP and Canada and Wisconsin, which lines up with the range map of the white oak species. And here's a map. So these are all the primary manufacturing facilities in Michigan that have responded that they process white oak roundwood at their mill, and of course all in the lower peninsula, except for one right up there in the eastern UP. All right, so this shows hardwood roundwood receipts broken down by species as reported by mills from our mill surveys. 73% total hardwood volume in the state, which lines up pretty closely to the percentage of hardwood forest type in the state. And towards the bottom there, you can see white oak represents about 2% of the total species volume, both in total volume in cords and saw logs in 1,000 board feet, with aspen and maple being the top species. All right, this graph shows roundwood receipts by species since 2004. And as you can see, most species, there's been variability over the years, but is not the case with white oak, which is the bottom red line. Pretty consistent since 2004 as compared to other species. All right, so summary of primary manufacturers of white oak in Michigan. The white oak species group roundwood use has been fairly steady since 2004. There were 106 mills, 106 of those 129 that responded to the survey in 2018. Most white oak species group wood processed is in the lower peninsula, 61% southern lower and 38% northern lower. Most white oak species roundwood is sourced also from the lower peninsula of Michigan, with 56% from the southern and 41% from the northern, and nearly all of it from within Michigan, 97%. The majority of white oak species wood received by mills was in the form of saw logs, a small percentage of veneer, about 25% pulpwood, and the rest was in the form of fuel wood for biomass or for commercial firewood. And then white oak process in Michigan is primarily used for sawn lumber and lower grade lumber is used for pallet products, upper grade for furniture trim and flooring. All right, so there are also 202 secondary manufacturers in Michigan that produce products made of white oak. And so a secondary manufacturer would be a company that produces a finished product out of a primary manufactured product, such as lumber. And so I'm not going to read through the list, but there are many things that are produced in Michigan as finished products, from furniture and flooring, and pallets, all sorts of things. All right, and so I wanted to provide just kind of a general overview of white oak markets and market trends right now. And so starting with white oak lumber, there was an abrupt price drop in white oak lumber and whole hardwood lumber in 2022. White oak fared better than most other hardwoods. And so that's white oak peaked in price about November of 21, and then it stayed steady until the summer of 22. And then there was an abrupt drop in price. And the reason primarily for that is because mills were operating at that peak production level. And then there was a significant drop in demand for hardwood lumber and hardwood products made from hardwood lumber. And so that drove the price down. And then secondary manufacturers were buying lumber as needed because of reduced demand for finished products. And so a drop in demand is due to several factors. Reduction in housing starts. The remodeling market remained pretty good, but also inflation and higher costs and everything. Fuel, energy, tools, components were a factor. And then there was also a slow export market for oak or white oak lumber. However, the bright side was that other markets, pallets, cants, railroad ties, crane mats, more industrial wood products have remained pretty strong. And some sawmill reports that I've seen indicate that there are sawmills that have started to switch over to some of these products. All right, so this is shows 4-quarter number one common white oak lumber price over. This ends October 21, 22, and then goes back a year. And so you can see about July, there was a significant price drop in lumber prices. That continued through November, but it appears that prices have started to stabilize in December. And so we'll see how it goes. But 1 year change in kiln dried price, about a 14% reduction and about 30% in green. And then also I threw red oak in there too for north central region. Same number one common lumber. And that, that is worse off, 30% change, reduction in price, kiln dried lumber for red oak. And so looking forward, to identify maybe some potential future growth for white oak markets in Michigan. Not based on necessarily any data, but just, from what conversations I've had, there's potential for urban sourced wood, potentially sorting out logs, using more urban wood as a source for lumber. Most, a large part of the mulch that's produced is from urban sourced wood. So maybe there's a possibility there. Also, the barrel market in Michigan, there are 3 companies, best I can tell, that manufacture barrels in Michigan, one in Grand Rapids, one in Kalamazoo, and one in Traverse City. so there might be potential for growth there. Seems like it will be something that would be in demand. And there's additional companies that refurbish barrels. And there's specifically one in Detroit that makes furniture and other specialty products out of bourbon barrels. All right, so I'm going to try to make this work for me. Mike, can you see that?
Yes, I can see it is opening up your browser.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So you're in business.
All right. All right, so Michigan DNR maintains this Michigan Forest Industry Directory. And this has a bunch of information, and I want to do a tour of this. A lot of the information that I presented today is publicly available, especially the information on how many how many of this for White Oak, or how many secondary manufacturers, how many primary manufacturers, et cetera. And so Michigan DNR maintains this directory with the hope that it can help companies connect and help forest landowners find service providers and help buyers of forest products. It's voluntary, so all of the listings in here are folks that have indicated to us that yes, we can put them in the directory. We do the best we can to update this, but if you're on this call and you see something that's not correct, or if you have a company that wants to be added to our directory, I would be happy to hear from you. There's some contact info here, but I'll also provide some contact info at the end of my talk. And so if you wanted to search just for a general product, like say pallet manufacturers, you could do a search and it will create a list. And this list is exportable. It's got contact information for all these various companies. Under industry type, manufacturer, sawmill, or there's producers. And so your manufacturer will be your secondary or your finished product manufacturer. Sawmill, your primary manufacturer, and producers would be your logging or trucking firms. We also have registered foresters in the database as well. And so if you click on the advanced search tab, you can search by species. So if you wanted to search for white oak, and you wanted to search for a white oak sawmill, and then you could do that, and it'll come up with a list which is exportable into a spreadsheet. So a lot of things you can do here. There's registered forester, sawmill, producer, manufacturer. You can use keyword searches. You can search by county. I don't know if there's, maybe we should check a number of counties. Okay, so that yielded some results. If you had any use to search by type of equipment that a company may use, or type of materials, for example, if you wanted to, look at recycled barn wood, you could do so, and then you get, looks like there's about 7 or 8 companies there. Products, there's a lengthy list here. Barrel staves, so got one company here. And so hopefully that can be useful to some people on the call. On the top here, there's a statistics. And so we've got some general statistics here: facilities per employee, definitions, counties by region, facilities by region, employees. And there's also a link to our forest products industry website. And so there's economics. We have a primary mills map, interactive primary mill map on our website. And so if you open that, sorted by type. You can also filter it so it only shows mills by a specific type. And so that's an option. It also has a attributes table, which is exportable. And so, and there's a few filtering options in this attributes table as well. You can also click on a dot and it will tell you who that is, phone number, what type of mill they are, what species group, is it hardwood, softwood. So we have that available for you. In addition, there's a secondary manufacturer's report. A lot of the information that I presented from primary manufacturers based on 2018 survey report is located in this report here. So that's that. I'm going to try to jump back to my presentation here. See that?
Yes, you're back in PowerPoint.
Perfect. All right, so that's what I have for today. That's my contact information. I can probably put the links to these websites in the chat when I'm done here. If you have any questions that can't be answered today, or if you were interested about some more information or anything, please contact me. My email address is there, my phone number, and I'd be happy to do what I can. So with that, do we have any questions?
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Chris. I failed in my job as a moderator to let people know and remind them to be typing in questions into that question and answer box down there at the bottom here on Zoom. I apologize. We do have some questions coming in, and a couple of them were some stump the chump type questions about other species and so forth. But let's see. So the first question was about how can a landowner get their hands on that Managing Oak Forest book? And I may have some extras available at the Michigan Forest Celebration, which is a meeting of the Michigan Forest Association and the Michigan Tree Farm System up in Marquette in September. But primarily trying to get those books in the hands of foresters. The book is available from Amazon and other booksellers. But the incentive is for members of Michigan SAF. We did have one question about red oak. Chris, are you feeling confident on red oak? Any idea on how red oak is used in different ways than white oak here in Michigan?
Not much difference. It's pretty similar. And so white oak has done a little bit better because the demand for white oak has been better. Red oak doesn't have the water tightness that white oak has. And so it's not used typically for cooperage, but as far as flooring and furniture, and it's also used for those too. And that's probably a bigger market in Michigan just because we have more red oak than we have white oak. But there's not substantial differences.
Great, thanks, Chris. Question here about does the DNR publish current market trends and forest products?
We do. I mean, what we publish is what's on our website. We also work with the U.S. Forest Service on TPO information, and so you can get information from them as well. But no, what we do is mostly related to the primary mill surveys that we do. Jagdish might have some information as well on market trends in the economics of forestry section, but I'll let him answer that part.
Sure. Okay. And that TPO, that's timber products output that the Forest Service publishes?
That's right. Yep.
Is that buried on some federal website somewhere, or is that easy to find with a quick Google search?
I can put a link in the chat. It's kind of easy to find with a Google search, but I'll put a link in as well.
Great, thanks. Let's see, question here about, can you clarify on what is the FIA definition of timberland versus forest land?
Okay, so timberland, there's timberland is forest land. So there's about 20 million acres of forest land in Michigan. And so forest land there's FIA definitions for that, but there's a 10% coverage, it has to be more than an acre and some other things. And so timberland is land that is not considered to be reserved. So it's open to potential timber harvest. And so there's about 19 million acres of that in Michigan, but that doesn't take into account operability and access and things like that. And so areas that would be forest land but not timberland would be perhaps like national parks and maybe some state parks if they don't do timber sales or things like that.
Yeah, and isn't there a biological productivity component as well, like a certain stocking level and capacity to produce? Isn't it like 20 cubic feet per year? Isn't that kind of the productivity of timberland minimum definition?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. So basically timberland is the higher volume, more productive forest lands, which is what, like 19 out of 20 million acres here in Michigan. So most of our forest is productive timberland.
Right. And I mainly just use timberland in my presentation because it's a forest products, presentation. So
got another question here about the Michigan Champion Tree Registry. Do you know if the Michigan DNR participates in the Champion Tree Registry?
That's a good question. I don't know. I would think so, but I don't know where you would find it. Do you know? I'm not sure.
Well, I don't. I think I'll have to ask Kevin Sayers. I think Kevin Sayers in our urban and community forestry program would be more in tune with that through the urban forest world. So I'll have to see if I can track him down. He's also here in the building today. But we're slowing down on questions. Any other folks out there in the audience have questions about any of the data that Chris presented? Oh, someone else added a clarifying question there about the Big Tree Registry. Yeah. So yeah, I believe it's the Michigan Botanical Society that hosts the Big Tree Registry. Yeah, I'll try to get some information from Kevin. All right, let's see, got another question coming in. All right. So we got a question, Chris, from a landowner that is part of a hunting club with 240 acres with a lot of oak. And they had a lot of oak die off in 2022. Does dead oak have merchantable value? And if so, for how long?
Okay. All right. Dead oak.
Salvage operation. What's the potential for salvaging dead oak?
Well, with the discussions I've had with some of the mills, I mean, they take it as long as it's solid. And so I would say within a year, if I had to put a number on it, but it's kind of hard to answer. It kind of depends on, site conditions and things like that too. And the quality of the wood, I mean, that might be part of the reason why you're having difficulty finding somebody to harvest. Some of the reports I've seen about red oak is that mills are having trouble selling it, that it's not, the demand for red oak right now is poor. And so that plays a factor. If they can't sell it to a mill, then they're not going to harvest it. And so I'm assuming maybe this is red oak, but I don't know. You could, you could reach out to some producers and see, and they could tell you, why it's difficult to sell it, but that would be my best guess.
Okay, great. Let's see. Got a question here. Is white oak sustainable? is cutting less than is being recruited? I think Jagdish is going to answer that question. I believe Jagdish has some data in his presentation that shows growth, harvest, and mortality. So Chris, you're off the hook on that one. We'll return to that question with Jagdish. Let's see, we got another question coming in here. How about potential for low value and small volume, small acreage woodlands? Got lots of landowners not wanting commercial level sales, but may have some marketable timber from small projects, 10 acres or less. Any advice, Chris, for landowners with small ownerships or small, harvest units, 10 acres or less? Is there potential there?
Yeah, I think there would be. It depends on, are we talking about white oak and the quality of the wood and where in the state you're located, and are there companies around that can not only harvest the wood, but do they have somewhere where they can sell the logs, and is there a market for that species and that product where that's located? So there's a lot of considerations. I think if that might be something I can help answer with more information, where is it at and the value of the timber and all, but yeah, I mean, it's possible. Yes. That there could be, some economic value in a smaller woodland.
Yeah, any small timber sale is challenging regardless of the species. And even if you have high value species, if you have a very low volume, it's just challenging to get that sale to the market. So whether it's oak or other species, that's a tough one. I was encouraged to see, though, you had 129 primary mills here in Michigan that are buying some amount of white oak. So that's about a third of the primary mills. So there is a lot of options for landowners to access the market if they've got white oak. Let's see, got a question here about is it economical to plant white oak?
Well, I don't know if I have a good question. I don't know if I have a good answer for that. Sounds like a silviculturist question, but I'm not sure. I mean, I don't hear of a lot of white oak plantings. I hear about talks of white oak plantings because potential climate change resiliency and things like that, but I'm not familiar with a whole lot of white oak plantings that have occurred. Do you know, Mike or Jagdish?
Yeah, I don't. Most people that I hear talking about planting white oak, it's really more for ecological or wildlife habitat benefits, without much economic analysis of where's the break even point in terms of future income. So yeah, you're getting some hard questions here, Chris. Yeah, I don't know about planting white oak for future forest products. That's I haven't seen anyone do that now. Let's see. So we've got a question here about we need you to put on your forecasting hat and look into the crystal ball. Do you see potential for increasing demand for red oak and white oak here in Michigan anytime soon?
Well, it looks like white oak and oak markets in general may level off, and so as much as the prices have dropped, they're still above 2019, 2020, like pandemic level pricing. Not that it's great, but so I think I can potentially see that. I don't know about increasing in the near term. Everything goes up and down, so it's going to increase sometime, but how near that is, I don't know. I don't see it increasing soon.
Sure. And is that likely tied into rising interest rates, slowing down the housing market?
Yeah, housing starts as part of it. I have seen some information that export markets are starting to come back. So maybe that would help with a slow increase. But I don't see enough change, I guess, to warrant saying that I see it, significant increase in the near future.
Sure. Okay. Well, Chris, our questions are slowing down and we're right at the 45-minute mark. So thank you very much. I think we'll make a transition now to Jagdish Pudel, our economist here at the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. We're getting some good economics questions here, and hopefully Jagdish can shed some light on those. So let's transition here. Jagdish, go ahead and see if you can share your screen. Yep, I can see your screen. You're in presentation mode, and
okay,
the floor is yours. Thanks, Jagdish.
yeah, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Chris, for presenting about the market of white oaks, because I thought like it will be a little bit of overlap on some of the information. But before I present about the economics of white oak, it's really good to understand what white oaks are used for and what are the different types of products that are made out of white oak. So welcome everyone. My name is Jagdish Pudel. I'm a forest economist with Michigan Department of Natural Resource. I do a variety of economics related work or research, looking at producing annual economic contribution of forest product industry in Michigan, analyzing the stumpage price report, conducting cost and benefit analysis of DNR related project, estimating the net present value of any project as well. And I collaborate with MSU in terms of varieties of economic related research. So today I'll talk about the economics of white oak. So basically I'll be presenting some of the FIA data as well as the price information of the white oak, how the stumpage price have been changing over the years, as well as what the volumes looks like. So hold on to those and let me move forward. So okay, let me change the slide here. Okay. So before jumping right into the white oak, I would like to provide some background on the forest product industry in Michigan. We manage forests not only for the timber production, but for the wildlife habitat, water protection, biodiversity conservation, and forest-based ecosystem services. And all these forests in Michigan has been always supported local and state economies and generated employment and income. Based on 2019 data in Michigan, our forest product industry supports more than 90,000 jobs and provide about 22 billion in total output. So all these industries contributions are based on all different types of forest and their products. But in today's presentation, where we are specifically talking about the white oak, and white oak, as you all know, it's one of the most unpopular hardwood species in the United States because it's very high value wood that is used in kitchen cabinets, flooring to whiskey barrels. And like in the earlier presentation, you heard there are three companies in Michigan that makes whiskey barrels where they use white oak. But relative to other states, we do not have much of those distillery industries market for white oak in Michigan compared to other states that I'll be talking about later in my presentation. So especially, talking about the white oak, it's very popular in the distillery industry, especially in Kentucky, a distillery industry that solely depend on the white oak. And one of the studies have shown that white oak has about 8.6 billion market in Kentucky alone. Unfortunately, we do not have similar kind of data for Michigan because of the very less information on the distillery industry and white oak utilization in Michigan. But looking at the other state and then the overall distillery industry, they have a really good market for white oak, and the 8.6 billion industry is itself a huge number. So there are the demand side and the supply side as well. So the demand are driven by these distillery industries as well as the furnitures and the kitchen cabinets products. Whereas on the supply side varies on depending on the location, such as slow-grown northern trees as well as the fast-grown southern trees. And the supply side is also affected by the low regeneration of the white oak because of deer eating seedlings, acorns eaten by the wildlife, as well as various tree-related diseases as well, especially oak wilt disease. And one of the study in Minnesota shows that in the last 10 years, oak wilt expansion may have infected 76,000 to 266,000 trees, which cost about $18 to $16 million in removing those trees from the ground. So there is a substantial cost related to these forest health or tree health related issues as well. So that's why on the supply side, because of low regeneration and health issues, on the demand side from the white oak demand from the distillery industry and the furniture industries, many stakeholders wanted to know more of the ecological and economic aspect of the white oak forest or the timber. This table is from Michigan FIA data. Like Mike already mentioned, I obtained this table from Scott Pugh from FIA, from the Forest Service. Here you can see the different oak species in Michigan from two different inventory cycle. The top one is from recent 2020 inventory, and then the middle one is 2013 inventory period, and there is the last 4 rows are the percentage change. There are northern red oak, black oak, white oak, and northern pin oak. These are the standard oak species that FIA provides in their query. But I would like to highlight specifically on the white oak. You can see in 2020, there was about 55 million trees compared to in 2013, 56 million trees. So that's about like 1.7% decline or less trees in 2020 compared to 2013. Likewise, we can see a net merchantable volume of white oak declined by 3.1% in 2020, that is compared to 2013 inventory period. And also the net growth declined by 15% in 2020. On the good side, there is a decline in mortality. So there is a less mortality in 2020 compared to 2013. So that's about 66% decline in mortality. Whereas if we see the harvest removal, there is a significant percentage increase in the harvest removal of the white oak. That basically indicates there is a huge demand for the white oak. That's why the harvesting might have occurred. And also because of the oak wilt disease or any other potential forest health related disease, probability the landowners might have harvested the white oak in recent years in 2020. So that's a significant increase in the harvest removal in 2020 compared to 2013. So this is the area of timberland, especially for the white oak forest type in thousands of acres by ownership group in Michigan. The top row is for 2013 and the second one is for 2020, and then the percentage change in the third row. So you can see the Forest Service timberland white oak forest type increased by 11.66%. That is the increase in the white oak in the Forest Service owned forest, as well as in the state and local government owned forest, the white oak acreage increased by 6.2%. Whereas if you look at the last column in the private ownership, the white oak acreage decreased by 1.39%. So what it shows is, especially in the publicly owned forest land, there is an increasing white oak compared to the private sector. And out of these, about 57, if we compare the percentage in terms of Forest Service, state government, and the private, we can say that about 57% of the white oak is in privately owned timberland. And in last 2019 total harvest acre, 73% of the total harvest acre is from the private ownership. So the privately owned forest, they harvest a lot of acres, and out of that, 57% of the white oaks comes from privately owned timberland. So let's move on with some of the data. Mike, I'm not sure because of this Zoom menu, I'm not seeing the top title. Are you able to see the title of the graph?
Yes, yeah, I can see your entire slide. It looks great, Jagdish.
Okay, how do I? Okay, sorry. Let me go back up. So this is the total volume of different types of oak that we sold. That means the Michigan DNR timber sale program sold by the years. So I have only 3 categories: mixed oak, red oak, and the white oak. In the x-axis, you can see from the year, and on the y-axis volume in 1,000 board feet. Here, white oak volume sales by year pretty flat. There is not a huge spike in the volume, and we don't sell much white oak as well. Most of the our sales are the mixed oak and a little bit of red oak and very less white oak. So we don't have like enough information on the volume or the pricing of the white oak specifically. You can see here in 2018, it's about 1,100 MBF in 2018, 962 in 2019, a little bit higher in 2020, and again went down to 1,700 MBF of white oak in 2021. So this is the white oak sold by Michigan DNR. And this chart shows the average bid price for those species. The orange one are for the red oak over the years, and this is the average bid price per MBF. The gray line is for the white oak, and the blue line is for the mixed oak. So earlier slide, we saw a lot of higher volume for the mixed oak, but the price is compared to those higher volume, the price is not that high here. The red oak price is a little higher in average bid price in this chart, whereas the white oak is the lowest one out of all 3 different types of oak price. And there is not much variation, just a minor one. So in 2018, it was $96 per MBF, went down to $86 in 2019, went a little up in 2020 to $111 per MBF. And in 2021, it's $116 per MBF. So this is the average price of different oak species according to Michigan DNR timber sale program. So this is from the public side, specifically in the Michigan, but in next couple of slides, I would like to expand the geographical location towards the Lake State region, with including Wisconsin and the data from Minnesota as well. So this is the average annual stumpage price of red oak in the Lake State region. The 3 graphs are for Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. And this data comes from TimberMart North. So the TimberMart North compiles the average stumpage price from 3 different 3 states, Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, and produce the reports. I extracted these numbers from the report and represented it here. So the red oak stump price from 2012 to 2021, we see a pretty higher price in Wisconsin and low red oak price in Michigan. Whereas in Minnesota, we see a little bit spike in 2014, close to $600 per MBF, and went down in 2016, pretty flat after that. So there is no data for Minnesota in 2020 and 2021 as of now. But the overall trend in Michigan for the red oak price looks pretty consistent. And I would like to stress the one important thing is here, these prices are in nominal terms. So these prices are not adjusted for inflation. So these are in the nominal terms. This chart shows the average stumpage price for the white oak in the Lake State region. The blue line is for the for the Michigan, orange line is for Minnesota, and the gray is for Wisconsin. We can see the white oak price are around $100 per MBF from 2012 to 2021 in Michigan. Pretty low compared to Minnesota and Wisconsin. So the prices are, stumpage prices are really high in Wisconsin and Minnesota compared to Michigan for the white oak. With that, the final oak price data is for all other oak species. They are combined together here. We can see all other oak species price are lower trend in Minnesota, average in Michigan, and higher in Wisconsin as well. So what we found looking at those FIA data and stumpage price is that there is a declining trend on the number of white oak tree numbers, white oak trees, decline in merchantable volume, net growth, and mortality, but increased harvest removal. The trend analysis that I showed in the previous graph, every year, the red oak stumpage price decreased by $4 per MBF in Michigan, $12 per MBF in Wisconsin, and $11 per MBF in Minnesota. So the red price oak was decreasing every year since 2012. Likewise, for the white oak, stumpage price increased by $5 in Michigan annually and $8.3 in Wisconsin, but it remained pretty consistent in Minnesota. All other oak species price decreased every year by $5.8 per MBF in Michigan, $5.8 per MBF in Minnesota, but increased by $8.9 MBF annually in Wisconsin. So overall, this is the conclusion of today's talk. I wanted to provide some of the volume information as well as what the stumpage price looks like in Michigan, as well as in the overall Lake State region. So with that, this is probably my final slide. With that, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer that. And here is my contact information. If you wanted to know more about these price information or have any specific questions, feel free to shoot me an email. Yes, with that, if there is any question that I can answer, Mike.
Great, thank you very much, Jagdish. Let's give the crowd a moment to type in any questions. I don't see any new ones quite yet. Let's see if we can get a couple there. I've got a question for you, though. I find it very interesting to see so much variability between Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota in terms of prices for both red oak and white oak. Do either you or Chris have any insights into why there is such variability in pricing between three pretty similar lake states here in the region?
When we look for those like higher price, basically it was like a higher demand for the white oak in the Wisconsin compared to the Michigan. So probably Wisconsin have more established supply chains, and there is a high demand for the for the white oak who processes white oak, like the sawmills or the other industries that needs more of the white oak, and that's why a lot of competition rising the prices in there compared to Michigan. But I'm not sure about the mills in Wisconsin utilizing a lot of the white oak. So I think that would be a good comparable point if we compare our mills using more white oak versus Wisconsin mill using white oak. So that would be a good starting point to see why the price is. But definitely it's because of the demand, a higher demand in the Wisconsin than in Michigan.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that jumped out of Chris's presentation was that white oak is only 2% of our harvest volume here in Michigan. So I guess when you have such a small volume, yeah, maybe the market's just not big enough to command higher prices or much variation in prices.
Yeah.
Let's see. I don't see any more questions typing in there. Let's give the folks out there in Zoom world another minute or two here to see if they want to, ask any questions for either Chris or Jagdish about different markets or economic trends.
I think, Mike, earlier there was a question somebody was asking, will there be economical to plant the white oak in Michigan, right? So, basically this stump-based price data will guide making those kind of decisions. So when you are planning for the white oak, plantations, you calculate your plantation cost, treatment cost, thinning cost. You calculate those costs in the different time period, and you take these average price that I presented here to calculate your potential revenue in 60 or 80 years from now when you harvest that. So basically, and then you compare those revenue that you might get in 60 or 80 years from now versus the cost that you incur for the white oak plantation. So that's how is the theoretically you make your decision whether to go with a white oak or the other type of species. But ultimately, you would need to have your initial plantation cost, treatment cost, and your revenue can based on the stump-based price and the lumber price as well. So that's how you estimate those.
Great, thanks. And one of the earlier questions was about sustainability. Could you go back to your table where you were showing, the number of trees and then growth and mortality and removals? See if we can, tease out that sustainability question here.
Can you see this slide, Mike?
Yeah, yep, you're in full presentation mode there on that table. So are we sustainable? Is growth exceeding mortality and removals?
Net growth is still declining. It's still negative, but and because of the mortality is declining, which is the good one. So I think it's going towards the positive way compared to 2013. But for the long-term sustainability wise, I'm not sure, I can fully say what it looks like, but compared to 2013 to 2020 data and seeing that 26% less, decline in the mortality and net growth, I think it's a pretty good looking ahead in years from now.
Great.
And that question, I did not specifically put that in my slide, but it will, when we look into the FIA data with low diameter, middle diameter, and larger diameter oak species, that will give us some idea about the sustainability as well.
Sure, thanks. All right, we've got a question from a forester down by the Indiana border. So how do prices compare between Michigan and Indiana and Kentucky? So as we start to move south, does a larger oak market command higher prices in southern states?
That's a really good question, and unfortunately, I did not explore the price in the Indiana and Kentucky, but because of the higher market for the oak in Kentucky and the other state using especially in the distillery industry, I would assume there is a good price competition for the white oak. But Yeah, I'm not sure how the price trend in Indiana and Kentucky looks like right now. While I was making this presentation, I specifically focused for the Lake State, but that's a really good question. And I think, Timber Mart North, I don't think that will cover those price information, but your Indiana and Kentucky, maybe the public timber sale price information can provide those insights. And I think Timber Mart not there is also a company who produce the price information in the South as well. So that also can be a useful resources for the oak, white oak price information.
Yeah, thanks, Jagdish. That's one, I'm going to follow up with that question with the White Oak Initiative with the American Forest Foundation and their partners throughout the eastern central US. It would, one of the things that I've enjoyed about your presentations today is looking at, Michigan markets and economics and a little bit of comparison here in the Lake States. That certainly does raise interesting questions about how do the Lake States compare with, the South and the East. If we're seeing this much variability just between Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota, yeah, it is. I'm curious to see, more of a regional and national approach. Especially since, we're on the lower end of prices and volumes here, even in the Lake States.
Yeah.
Let's see. Got a question here about, why is the oak forest type still decreasing? Can landowners manage their white oak forests in ways to reduce that decline?
I think for the decreasing white oak coverage is basically, like I already mentioned in the earlier stage about in the seedling stage, where it's very hard to protect the seedlings from the deer browsing, as well as the acorns and some of the forest health disease issues. These factors play a role in regeneration of the oak species. Yeah, that's all I know. I mean, like, I'm not sure if I answered that correctly, but those are the factors.
Sure. Yeah, actually, we explored a few of those issues in some of the earlier webinars. And so that is the $1 million question. Why is oak declining? Why are we not getting regeneration past that sapling stage into the pole timber stage? When I process the attendance list and submit that to the National Society of American Foresters for CFEs for records, I will share that list with all the participants, and I will include an attachment of this PDF here. I've actually compiled several of the PDFs from AFF's, the White Oak Initiative Landowner Guide, and there's some really good publications here. Challenges of Upland Oak Regeneration, and then Sustainable Oak Management Practices, talking about 10 different ways to manage oak forests and ways to increase white oak regeneration, recruitment, and survival. So I will include this information when I send out the attendance records and process that probably at the end of the month after I get back from vacation. But there are some good resources that are out there. So let's see. So I think we're running out of questions, and we're a little bit ahead of schedule here, but Chris and Jagdish, thank you very much for your presentations today. Thank you everyone for participating. Again, I will follow up with an email, likely at the end of the month, not this week, after my little vacation, and follow up with records for your attendance, for continuing forestry education credits. And I'll include a PDF of this landowner guide, point you where to find the additional information on the White Oak Initiative website. And then both Chris and Jagdish have shared some other online resources for additional forest products and economics data. And I'll try to gather that from Chris and Jagdish and include that in the email. So be looking for that information at the end of the month. And with that, I don't see any other pressing questions. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Chris, Jagdish, thank you so much for your work putting together the presentation.
Thank you, Mike.
With that, I'm going to turn off the recording and wrap up the webinar. Thanks, everyone. Happy New Year. Hope 2023 is a good one for you.